My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. I've had the privilege of interviewing several near-death experiencers on this program, sharing how their lives were profoundly changed by these experiences. If a single experience of this nature was life-changing, imagine the transformation from 6 near-death experiences. My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Tamara Caulder Richardson, is a 6-time near-death experiencer and evidential psychic medium known as the Southern Bell Medium. She is also a trance and conscious channeler of ascended masters. Tamara is the host and producer of the popular YouTube Seeking Heaven channel and founder of the Academy of Divine Wisdom. Her websites include southernbellmedium.com, academyofdivinewisdom.com, and christacademyoflove.com. She joins me this week to share her amazing story and the gifts she received from these experiences. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Tamara Caulder Richardson. Welcome, Tamara.
Oh, Victor, I'm so happy to be here and excited to talk to you.
Tamara, so wonderful to bring our listeners part 1 of your amazing life, work, and story. We had the pleasure of meeting as part of a group of amazing hosts at Neil Gore's Portal to Ascension Ultimate Star Beings Conference back in January, and I'm grateful for what I regard as a soul reunion and friendship. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, we could barely do the interview without tearing up that we knew each other and that we have the same eyes. Our eyes are similar and our heart is too.
Absolutely. Now, I love your moniker, the Southern Bell Medium, and I know I shared with you that I currently live in Queens, New York, but I don't think I shared with you that I'm originally from the South. Did I tell you that?
Oh my goodness, no.
Yeah, I'm from South Brooklyn, New York. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you're one of those New York wise ass people, right?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. As I mentioned in our introduction, you're an international evidential medium and angelic starseed messenger, a Christ and ultra-dimensional channeler, an author, a 6-time near-death experiencer, afterlife speaker, multiple spiritually transformative experiencer, that's an STER that you created, including UFO sightings, cryptids and contactee, and producer and host of the YouTube Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomenon channel, and director of the Academy of Divine Wisdom Ascension School. Now, let me ask you a question. What do you do on Tuesdays?
On Tuesdays? Probably editing. Why? Oh my gosh.
Amber, let's begin with your early life and formative years. Did you have a normal childhood?
No, but at the time I didn't know what normal was. And so my near-death experiences started as a prenatal and age 3, and then 4, 5, 10, and then 38. So I didn't know that it was not normal the way that I was. I knew things. I had knowing, clear knowing, always. And it really was heightened by my 3rd near-death experience when it was through a nail through the head. I was playing, it was under a dresser. It was in an antebellum house. We were playing hide and seek, and it was under a dresser. And I don't know who nailed a nail under the dresser. And I was jumping and squealing like kids do. And I jumped and it went through my head and I thought water was dripping everywhere, but it wasn't. It actually pierced my skull. And so at that point on, I saw and talked fully communicated with spirit people, but that I knew was unusual, but I had no one to talk to. But I think I was always an odd kid, but I didn't know I was. I knew that the spirit people, and I was seeing in other realms, some of them not so great. that I didn't really understand that, and I had to learn to deal with it myself. I say that, but my guides were there, and my angel brothers, sisters, they were there. So I never was really quite alone, but it did open my perceptives when I was 3, because I could see when I went out of my body different directions. I could see above my body, different places in the house all at once and outside. I could hear different conversations going all at the same time. I had very heightened senses. And I knew intuitively that if I went back in my body, it was going to hurt. So I tried to stay out of it. But just that alone to me is a gift, to know that we're not our body. So I knew right away at 3, we're not our bodies.
What were some of your other out-of-body experiences like? Where did you go?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So out of body, NDE. Okay. And some people may say, why so many near-death experiences? Well, I think each one took me to a different state of mind, a different level of consciousness. It also let me know that there is no death. So it's not, I did come back. It was the plan for me to come back. So, it all worked out. And I think that my soul needed that. It needed to know these higher levels. And honestly, some of the levels are very hard, and you can't reach them unless I hate to say it, unless you go further. And maybe I'm an overachiever, and that's what I wanted. But these other states, an example would be when I was 4, my other near-death experience, it was, my mom had me early on. She was 18, had me at 19. And then it didn't work out. They had a shotgun wedding, didn't work out. And he was, apparently from Poe white trash. And it did not, it was one of that paint that scenario. And so she called my grandma. There was a big scene. My uncles and all, they came in and got me as she was pregnant. So I grew up with my grandparents. And she was at this point, early 20s, she wanted to get married and have a father for her child. And so she was smitten with this guy who was a DJ and he, Rockin' Ray, and he was charming and all of that. She just, in a small town, Hickory, North Carolina, she just had to have that man. So we went on a day date. She wanted me to meet him, but the weather was horrible. At that time, it was snowing. It was icy. Really, no cars are out. And so my grandmother had this really gut feeling, please don't go, please don't go. So we went out, we ate at the Pizza Hut, ate ice cream afterwards. I don't know why. We went back to his radio station, and I got to go through some LPs, picked a couple Motown, then that LP that the sister wrote on the Lord's Prayer. That was very handy later on. And so it kept me safe. Anyhow, so they were arguing, and they came back and they were in an argument. So we leave and they're still arguing. He slams on the brake. We spin around a 360. We land into a tree in a park. And it was just it was a small, tiny park. It was kind of in the middle of town. It was a small little walking area. And we hit on the driver's side where the tire is. So I was not in a car seat. They didn't really promote that back then. And it was one of those large bucket seats in a Pontiac. So I went through the windshield, and the moment that I hit an impact, there was no pain. So when I tell people in my medium readings, they go, oh, some of these things are tragic. How deaths, either we can go slow or fast. You don't, when you go fast, it's like a baseball, they catch you. And so I did not feel anything. I just saw blackness. I was confused where my hands and feet were. I was like, where are they? But I was fully conscious, just like I was before. Nothing changed. Just like, boom. I just didn't have a body. And then I saw a pin light at the end. It got closer, it got brighter and brighter, and it was Christ. Now, my grandmother talked about Jesus, and if I needed him to call on him, he's the go-to guy. But I wouldn't say she was very spiritual. And very involved in the Presbyterian Church, but she was also eccentric and had gifts. So, so she wasn't all totally traditional. Okay. But in a lot of ways, yes, in a lot of ways, no. So I knew I wasn't sure who he was at first, but as he got closer, I knew who he was. And then he told me I had to go back. But when I did was the cool part. When I went back and his words spoke me forth back, is that I didn't go in my body. I kind of was around the body and looking in different directions. And what I saw to the right, it looked like a God portal. It was flaming and bright, and it wasn't scary. It may sound scary. It was powerful, but it was beautiful. And it's like a rip in the universe. And by that was at the time, I knew it was my guardian angel. They said but she, I identified with a she because, I'm a girl. But anyway, as Uriel, and I didn't even know what that was, till later on. That was an archangel. I didn't even know. And there was like an orange color and yellow, brilliant from her. And then behind me, and I'm seeing all this going on. My spirit eyes were fully open. I could see behind me there was again, it's snowy, it's icy. At this point, there's no snow, it's just ice. It's just bad weather. Like, you really shouldn't be out. There's no cars out. I see a fire station, and I see all these spirit people, but I don't go, oh my God, they're spirit people, because I'm actually spirit at that point too. So it's like completely normal. But they're wearing these firemen, these old-timey fire outfits, and they're concerned. I mean, and there's about 200 spirit people out there, maybe more. And some of the people there they're dressed in like the 30s and 40s and 50s. And then one lady comes to the window on the left side, but no one can see her but me. And I'm unconscious in my mom's arm, and she's crying, but I'm seeing all this going on. And then she leans in and she says, you are, she said, your grandmother is friends with my mother. Hi, I'm Judith Hefner. She used to shop at my grandmother's jewelry store. Wish you could make this up. But I mean, they're people, so they're going to say people stuff. And I was like, kind of like, oh. And then I started hearing this chatter behind. She's the one who carries our voices. She's the one who carries our voices. And I didn't really know what that means till now, but I really try to avoid being a medium, but I always could have full conversations. So I knew I could be good at this, get spirit people like me.
Say that out loud, because we couldn't hear you.
Okay. That, about the chatter.
Yes.
They said she's the one who carries our voices. She's the one that carries our voices, but it was like whisper, whisper, whisper. And I didn't know at that time what that really meant, because I really avoided, I tried to be normal, because back in the day, I don't know if they do it now, but it wouldn't have worked out with people's reality, knowing that I could talk full conversations with spirit people and see them and see dimensions and see things. They wouldn't have understood that. So I never really, it's something I always hid until much later in life. I came out as a evidential medium, and then I trained 8 years extensively with famous mediums, and got certified by them. But I trained at the Omega Institute, and then I would go to this little church. It was a spiritualist church in New Jersey, and I would take all these British mediums would come in, and I would take classes there 8 years extensively, flying back and forth with like Tony Stockwell. I trained with Janet Novak, who's now passed. She's an author. And then I trained with Tony for a long time. I did trance. I did all the highest levels of mediumship, and probably I counted up over 600 mediums. I never had an ego. I just said, well, let's give it a go. And so I think I was underestimated, because people were like, oh yeah, look at her, she's just a joke. And then I always like rocked out, and everything was like, yeah, names, dates, street locations. And then Lisa Williams I trained with later. I got certified by her, and I trained. But honestly, I'm gonna be honest, it was Jesus. You can call him Yeshua or whoever, but we know who he is. And it was him that through my NDEs and through the big one I had at 5, I connected with him. He never left me. He brings me different saints, and he talks to me and tells me things. He tells me things all the time. He tells me technical things. He tells me whatever I want to know. I mean, he's really fun. but he was the one who taught me the mediumship, and he taught me about different levels at different states, how many different states in the higher realms they are, what our spirit bodies, what to do, what not to do, mediumship, and all that. He taught me most of that, and then I had my guides and my angels assist too. So I had been listening to them since I can remember. But my 5 was the biggest one where I was dead 2 hours. I don't know if you want me to go into that one.
We're going to talk about the near-death experiences a little bit later on. But I'm just curious as to when you were a child and started having the experiences and getting this information. When I was a kid and I had these experiences starting at as far back as I can remember, age 5, I would share this with my parents or anyone who would listen. And I was told I was imagining things. I was labeled as a child with an overactive imagination. Did you receive anything like that? Did anyone ever question you or say you were just imagining things or tell you not to share what you were sharing?
Uh, I want to use those exact words because I'm really thinking. You asked me, so I really like to put a lot of thought into it. When I was growing up, I was gaslit. Let's just use the word. I was gaslit a lot, a lot.
By who?
By my father, my stepfather. She ended up marrying that radio DJ guy who ended up from age 4 to 12 sexually molesting me, which is why I was really quiet in school. I'm not quiet by nature. And I became hostile and angry because I was my way of like, get away, kind of thing. And so I was told that I'm crazy, that people aren't going to understand you. You're too deep. You think too much. That was a big one. You think too much. How can you think too much? If you think too much, is your brain going to explode? I mean, I never understood that one. They never really listened to me. I always kind of say I grew up in a wolves raised me because it was very base. There were things that were so obvious that there was so much suppression in the household from the stepfather to my mom and my sister. Now, my brother the youngest, he never really got anything because he was the male. Don't ask me why, but he was told he's a guy. So I don't know what all that meant. I'm just telling you that's how it was. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I was told for a long time that I was crazy. And that this is the big one. Oh gosh, I hate to go here, but I'm going to go here. No one would listen to anything I have to say. Now, do you think that would F you up your whole life? And now I'm like in broadcast like you, I'm a public speaker. Do you think that I had to get past that? I had to get past because I heard it all the time. No one will listen to you at anything you have to say. I was also told that, oh, you're really pretty, so you need to marry. You could marry whoever you wanted. And I'm thinking, it was like I was what do you call it? Like a horse in a stable, like I'm property. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Of course, I married some, poor guy, but rich in heart, rich in spirit. And we did fine in life. But yeah, and I didn't. It was. Understand now we're in families that we are, so we can transmute that and work with that. But honestly, it was such a dark environment. I think that's why the sexual abuse is not really sexual abuse. It's control and dominance and power. And I think that he definitely had darker energies attached to him for sure, that they wanted to bring me down in my mission here, but it didn't work. And I remember years later, I think it was like 38, as that I started getting all these flashes of memory of just not good, like being locked in the closet, trying to lock myself in there and to hide. And then we had the slats in there, so I was sticking like hangers in there, trying to poke, get away. And I was a little teeny, if I'm 6 or 8 years old, a little teeny person, and which led to my NDEs because I'm like, I just don't want to be here. But I look now at all of that, and I did tell him, let's finish it up at 38. I did tell him, I remember it all. That was my way of going, kind of screw you. Like, I remember. But looking at it now, I feel so sad and sorry for someone that would do that to anyone, but do it to a child. They've got to be really broken. And so he was the one when he was in the hospital. I was there praying over him. Like I was like, well, you wouldn't believe it. I saw his relatives all in the room. I saw this angels above him. He was going through some spiritual fight. I mean, he was really tormented. He was shaking. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm praying over him, feeling sorry for him, asking for assistance. 4 years he was a ghost. He tried to harass me. He tried to harass my mom. I told him, no condition you're going to do this. I had it in life. You're not going to do it in death. And then eventually asked him if he'd cross over. He kept saying, he'd come to other people, say, quit asking, have her ask me to cross over. That would be me. But eventually, slowly over the years that he did. But I feel sorry for tortured souls. And I think it sucked, but it made me more compassionate to other people and their pain and their suffering and what they've had to pierce through, all the negative talk that people might have heard growing up to try to just have a life and be somebody. So I'm very sensitive to that with people.
I am grateful that you were able to come through those experiences with the revelations and the open heart that you have, the beautiful open heart that you have. Without going into a lot of details, I had a dad who believed in corporal punishment. And when I would do things, because I had a lot of experiences that led me into experimenting with equipment and things in the 1950s and maybe not necessarily being able to put them back together. And his response was anger and removal of his belt and beating me. And when he would do that, I would run into the closet in my room, sit at the controls of my imaginary spaceship, look up and say, take me off this place. I don't belong here. And that also led me to be more compassionate to others as I grew and matured with the understanding of what his story was and what my story was and what everyone's story is. So both of us are survivors in different ways of experiences that came into our lives to make us the people we've become today. And I'm grateful that you are who you are.
Well, I feel the same way about you. And I also got the belt with the buckle. So it was, all that was unpleasant, but when I now look back on it, I just think about, my gosh, how broken are these people? And I think that's, you and I both are transmuters of negative energy to positive energy by presence, because we've had real hands-on experience with that.
And we've learned to forgive.
Yeah. And yeah, you have to. And I really don't want someone to be in a hellish, horrible, hate themselves state. I really don't.
Yeah.
I want them to be better.
Absolutely. My guest, Tamara Caulder Richardson. We're talking about her 6 near-death experiences. Amazing story. Tamara, please share with our listeners where they can find out more about you and also your upcoming book.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. Well, those of you that want an evidential life path reading, I do a lot of those all over the world via Zoom, and they're very accurate. It doesn't matter if you're over Zoom, but that would be at southernbellmedium.com. And Bell is spelled Belle. There's an E on it. So southernbellmedium.com. And also, if you're interested in taking courses on my Ascension School, which I just started, so it's not too late. We just started the master class on how to develop your superpowers. It's an amazing class. We have an intimate group. I think it's like 14 people, a pretty powerful people in there. And we're going to be practicing and starting that on a Thursday, May 28th. So if you're interested in that, go to, and I have lots of classes that are downloadable. I was told to teach about 17 years ago, and I kicked and I fought, and finally I'm doing it. And I'm really loving it. I'm meeting wonderful people. I teach primarily spiritual teachers, but that doesn't mean that beginners are also in my class. So I take care of everybody. That's at academyofdivinewisdom.com, academyofdivinewisdom.com. And also, everybody, please check out my Seeking Heaven channel. And that's at YouTube. If you go YouTube, the little symbol at Seeking Heaven channel, you'll find me. And we're going to have Victor on as a guest, because I cannot wait to hear about his spiritual life. He's so fascinating. I could just listen to him all day. And I'm so grateful to be here today to share some of my story with him and with you.
And her upcoming book will be entitled Love from Heaven. Tell us when that's coming out.
Well, I was invited on the Portal to Ascension Galactic Cruise, And so I'm going to be on that. And by the way, anyone that signs up under my name, Tamara Richardson, yes, I have to plug this real quick. They're going to get, for every person that signs up, a $325 either evidential medium, life path. I can go into starseed stuff too, reading from me for 30 minutes. So you put my name in there. And, if you email me, I tell you the details, but I'm going to be on there and at that point, that'll be December, that I want to be able to have a release of the book. So thank you for mentioning that.
Wonderful. And we'll be back with more of Tamara after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Tamara Caulder Richardson. We're talking about her 6 near-death experiences. Tamara, I've had many guests on Destination Unlimited before that have had their lives transformed by a single near-death experience. You had 6 of them. We talked briefly about a couple of them. Start talking more about each of these experiences, what brought them on, and what you learned during each experience.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be back, Victor. And to answer that first question, why, I suppose that I'm a spiritual overachiever.
Boy, you take the hard way of getting there, don't you?
Well, yeah, but if you put it in perspective, we don't really die. And if you look at it this way, with near-death experiences, they do take you into different realms, and depending where you are with your soul consciousness, it takes you there. And as a matter of fact, I did a talk on Portal to Ascension. It was in Atlantis when I was going through this past life. And then also talked about Egypt. In Egyptian times, what we would do is I was a high priestess in both, but I was a high priestess, and we would do to initiate, you do all these different spiritual superpowers and working with the elements and controlling different things and having mastery over it, manifestation. But then at the end, to kind of graduate, you had to go through an NDE, and they would put you in situations. One would be into a boggy kind of creek kind of situation. And there were alligators, and you had to move them away and kind of stay in your state. And then that was one, and be calm. And they would lock you in a chamber and where there would be no air. So these used to be rituals that were done to put people in these states. I wouldn't recommend it. But what it did immediately, and why I felt I needed it as on a soul level, is that when I came here, things didn't seem right. I know I'm probably speaking to my people now. It didn't seem right here. Okay. It seemed off. I didn't understand why people, and this wasn't just being a child. I didn't understand why people didn't say what they meant and why they lied. I didn't understand certain ways that people would act, but they didn't really feel that way, but they would have this social veneer. And so it was helpful for me to see, starting my near-death experiences started from prenatal, when my mom didn't quite carry me, and I saw her losing so much blood, everything that was said. As a spirit being, I felt only remorse for her and upset and concern. Then I had one at 3, 4, 5, and then 10 and 38. And at each time I saw a different form of reality. And what it said is that where I stand now in life as an adult, I say that we are in this created holographic universe. And there are different dimensions and timelines that are happening that we can access at any point in time. Although I think you need mastery of that, because there are little traps you can get caught in. I don't know if I'd recommend doing that unless you have some spiritual training under your belt. But that it showed me that this veneer, this that's in this world, that's not reality. So as I went through these states, and there's some really cool stuff that happened. I had a lot of out of body experiences. I've seen and dealt with ghosts and lost spirits, so many things along the way. But that I felt that was my reality. And until now, us talking, I say not now, maybe a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I could really start talking about these things, but I couldn't talk about them for many years. But I knew in my mind that was the true reality. And until then, I would just stay connected to watching all these sci-fi shows, Star Trek, Lost in Space. Loved even the Hulk, superpowers. I love I love werewolves, where they would turn into, because they could become super powerful, right? They could, not that I, like werewolves, but they could take on great things. And, loved all these things. And then, of course, I still do. And that's a whole different topic, the whole UFO and the whole, and meeting people in my life that are kind of important, I guess, are known people now that I didn't know that would circle back around. And here I am. But it helped form what I thought was true, which was reality. And I think if you can think it is, there are so many different viewpoints. But I know we talked about last time, we didn't really say my prenatal, but my third one where I had the nail in the head and saw from different directions. I could still sense, smell, whatever, without having a body. And then when I was 4, about us going, hitting the tree from my mom dating this guy, and they went out. It was a bad snowy day, and they hit this tree. And then I went through the windshield and saw different dimensions, spirit people, a rip, kind of a God portal. It was amazing, like a fire circle portal going out. It was just magnificent with my angel. But those pretty cool. And those in themselves are amazing. But my favorite NDE, this is pretty bad. It's like, you have favorite songs. This is my favorite one. And this is the thing that I love so much, because I got to really meet and know Jesus. And that is so good. I mean, that is such a good love. It is so good. And I was 5 years old in this one. This was a big one. And this is the near-death experience that what happened leading up to it. So I had a near-death experience at 3, 4, and 5. So 3 in a row. Okay. So what happened at 3, it opened my consciousness to seeing spirit people, talking to them fully. And they would come to me every freaking night. Sometimes I'd have a night off, but most of the time it was pretty constant growing up. And I guess I was like a little light being, like a little juicy morsel to these lower level things, because we're very close on Earth to the archon realm, or to the lower entity realms. That's why we want to, when I meditate or pray, or however you want to call it, I start with my crown chakra up. I'm just going to bypass those people. I don't want to even deal with it. But when I was younger, I didn't know those things. And I would have lost souls talk to me. And I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, I'm just a kid. Why are you telling me this? And then I would have these dark humanoids. But they were, I would consider them demons. You can call them what you want, but they had a tadpole tail, and they were black, and they were big, and they were crawling the walls. And they usually have one or two. They'd show up every now and then. They had red eyes. They had a mouth huge like a shark, way up like a big grin. And they would just come to intimidate me because they knew who I was sent here on a mission. It sounds like the Blues Brothers, but I was. And they knew who I was. They were just trying to frighten me. And so that was training wheels for the spiritual world. And I eventually had to learn that. But that started at 3. So when 5 comes about, I am being sexually abused by my stepdad, who my mom married. Now he's trying to adopt me. We moved from Hickory, North Carolina, the small town, to Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the capital of North Carolina. And we moved there, and he's at a bigger radio station where I mentioned like Wolfman Jack and different famous people work there. And then from there we went to I was trying to think of the radio station. I can't off. I don't know if it was Kicks. I think it was Kicks, WKIX. But anyhow, we moved there into an apartment. Was getting ready to start first grade. So my mom was doing this thing called Kelly Girl, where she would go be a secretary now and then. She didn't really have a lot of skills. And so she would leave me with, the pervert. That's what, I don't know what else to call it. The stepdad, and it started. And he would hold me down. He would say things. He's in love with me. This is a lot for a 5-year-old. It was just creepy. People don't understand what pedophiles, it's not so much the act as the creepy stuff they say. It's just gross. Okay. So anyway, this went on. I didn't understand what it was. I knew it wasn't right. And so I started talking to, Jesus, because this is who my grandmother said, you need to talk to him if you need a friend. I was like, I need a friend. So I said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you kill him? And that I didn't really know what killing or murder was because I was a 5-year-old. So I got this kind of friend like, I said, okay, well then just take me. I can't do whatever this is anymore. I cannot do it. So when you tell God, Christ, your higher self, whatever, you're done and you're really serious, they're going to make that happen. So you got to be really careful. We're powerful manifestors. So I said, I can't do this. And I remember when it all happened, the precepts, what time of day. There was we were backed up to a forest because they cut all this out for a new development. And I remember I was watching a TV Carol Burnett show, and I was very bad sore throat, and it went on 2 days. They didn't do anything. I had a high fever. By the 3rd day, it was almost 104. It was 103.9 at that point, and then it got higher. And my mom didn't know what to do, so she called the hospital. They didn't have emergency centers like they do now, so she called the hospital. They said, put me in an ice bath. So I remember first, before she did that, she tried to feed me. I couldn't eat. And she tried to make soup. It was tomato soup and cheese toast. I remember that. I couldn't eat at all. I couldn't swallow, and I couldn't understand why. But the reason why is my lungs were shutting down. And so she put me in an ice bath. Funny, I never forgot that, because when you're sick and you're freezing, even though you got a high fever, you are not, when you're freezing, you're thinking blankets. You're not thinking ice bath. But that's what we did. And she even borrowed ice from the neighbors. I remember that. She went and got that because she had to put a lot of ice in there. And so she put me to bed. She dried me off, dressed me, put me to bed, shut me in an hour. I was drenched. I was semi-unconscious. So she finally told my stepdad, we're going this time. We're leaving, because he wanted to go before. And he's like, no, we don't have the money, which my grandparents would have had the money and spotted us. But she says, I don't care, we're going. So it's at this point, interesting. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated that day. So we had martial law. We had MPs out. The roads were locked off. It was after 10. At 10, you had a curfew, 10 p.m. So we couldn't go out. Well, this was a dire situation. So Mom said, I'm holding her. You're driving. Let's go. So she had to get really ugly for that to happen. My stepdad was a very suppressive person, but charming, in public. And so we went, and as we're driving, we see these nobody's in the road, but I could see in the distance it was glowy. It was kind of glowy. So I'm losing consciousness. I go above the above the car, and I'm seeing all these riots in the distance and the fires and all this going on. And I do that a couple times, go in and out of my body. And at one point we stopped at an MP station. They said, "What are you doing out? Nobody's supposed to be out." And my stepdad, who's trying to adopt me, said, "Well, my daughter is, she's very ill." And he could see I was unconscious. So he said, "Okay, I'll call ahead to the other," because there were other stop stations ahead. "I'll call ahead and let you through." And he's like, "Okay." So, as we're driving through the next one, which is taking a while to get there because we were kind of out in the suburbs, I died, and I went above my body, and I died, and I watched everything from above. I was just observing. I really didn't have an emotion. And then as we got to the hospital, I would go back in and check in the car. We'll do that. Before we got to the hospital, my mom was cussing my stepdad. How dare we should have gotten there. She, what's going on. She didn't understand why I was lifeless. And so they prepared. I had 12 people come out and get me. There were 2 doctors and there were nurses and assistants to put me on there, and they rushed me back. And I was dead. I was clocked in as dead on arrival, 15 minutes, DOA, DOA. And then they put me as code blue. And then they started telling me all this, get CC's this and this and that. They did all this stuff to get my heart started. And then they started pumping this goop out of my lungs. I'm watching this all from the side like, wow, what's going on? And I could see the lights above and all. And so they're pumping this gooey stuff, which my lungs were filled with mucus. They were shut down at that point. And so I leave because I'm bored. I thought, well, I'll let them do what they're doing. And I go in the hospital and I start seeing everything that's there. I start looking in different rooms at people. One guy needed some water and no one was paying attention. So I knocked the water off so someone would hear it and get him some fresh water. And then a lady was giving birth and she was afraid she was going to lose the child. And I was telling her in spirit to hang in there. So I thought, this is great. I'm an angel. This is wonderful. I'll just keep doing this. And then I was at a candy machine and this little girl in a brownie suit saw me. And I was surprised she saw me because I thought no one could see me. I thought that was cool. And I could zoom around real fast. And I go back to the room. Basically, them trying to get me, I was flatlining. This went on 2 hours. I could see my mom in the hall crying. The doctor would go back and say, we're trying to get her vitals. But my mom didn't know what he was talking about. She was like, she knew it was bad. I don't think she knew what he was saying. I was dead. And so they eventually covered me with a sheet. This was after 2 hours. And they left me kind of sitting there waiting. And then someone saw some kind of motion. Anyhow, they put me in an induced coma for 3 days. Now, keep in mind, as I'm saying this, my mom never told me any of this. Nobody told me any of this. Nobody. I did a regression, I will fess up, and all this came out and more with extreme detail. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And so when I actually mentioned it to my mom years later, she was shocked that I knew. She was like, how do you know that? Because a lot of parents, they try to hide things if someone's had NDEs as a child. But I remember being in that tent. But during those 3 days I was in induced coma, it was wonderful because I got to spend it with Jesus. But how that ended up happening is when they covered me with a sheet, and in between I'm waiting and I'm left for dead, which that was kind of hard to kind of look at that, because it's kind of final. And I kind of felt sad for that little girl there. Is that I saw 2 Catholics in there, which I wasn't raised Catholic. I didn't even know much about that. I knew what it was because they held rosaries, but that's about it. And there was a nun and there was a priest. And the woman said, "Blessed are the innocent." And I thought, who are they talking about? They were talking about me. I found out later as an adult that church, that hospital, Rex Hospital, used to be, it was built as a Catholic hospital. And it was, I remember the name because it was like T-Rex, I'm a kid, so I like dinosaurs. So anyhow, they were there, and all of a sudden I'm in a field, and I'm looking down, and I'm standing there, and there's a man that's grabbing my hand, and he's smiling, and he has all this light coming out of his heart all around him, beaming, and he's got really good teeth and a really good smile. And I looked at him. His eyes looked like they were living. They were blue and green. They were just kind of moving around. They like they're living. And he had, I would say, warm brownish hair with golden lights through it, a little below his shoulders. And I said, "You're that man I talked to." He goes, "I am." He thought that was funny. He said, "I have something to give you." And I thought, oh, I said, "A toy?" He thought that was funny. And he said, "No." And he took part of his rope belt, and he says, and then he put it around my left hand. He goes, "I wrap you in my love, protection, and wisdom. Much is given, much you'll give. Through the big things, the small things would be done. And through the small things, the big things would be acknowledged." And he said, "You have to go back." And I said, and then I saw kids playing on a roundabout, spinning around. It was a pasture. It was like the most beautiful place you can imagine. And I really pitched a fit. I was like, "No, I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you. I want to stay with you. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to that life. I don't want to do it." And he realized he needed to calm me down. He goes, "Okay, let's walk." His time was there, so it's not like we're on a time clock. So he says, "Well, let's walk and talk for a minute." And so as he walked, every blade of grass would curl around his feet. It was beautiful. He had really pretty feet. I've seen his feet twice. It's the prettiest feet you've ever seen for a man. And it looks like he just had a petty. It's just beautiful. And he's walking. The flowers, they have life. The grass has life. The trees and the leaf, it's like they're whispering, his name, or in just acknowledging him. It was just beautiful. It was like a sweet whisper breeze. And then we came to this very large tree. It was really pretty. It looked like cherry blossoms, kind of like a cherry blossom and a dogwood combination. And then it had little red cherries on it. And then he goes, "We don't eat from this tree." And I'm thinking, I wasn't thinking about eating about the tree. I want to know what you've got to say and why I'm here. And so there's a big rock there. And he goes, so he sat against the rock, and I kind of leaned up against him, and he said I could ask him anything. So I'm a kid, 5 years old. So I asked him, "Well, how does electricity work?" Because I didn't know what to ask. And he told me by mind-to-mind communication telepathy. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was kind of bored about it. I was like, "Okay." And I asked a couple other things. And then he began teaching me. And he said, he didn't say manifest. He said, we create with our minds, and heaven here, it happens really fast. He said, but on earth down there, he said, and I think you could say down, like it's up or down. It's really not up or down, but I think it's because it's dimensionally lower. That's why I said that. But he said, we do it through our words and through our mind. So it's very important that you are mindful of your words and and what you think. And he said, but it happens quick here. Whatever you want to do, you think it and you're there. You can go any place you want. And there's a replica of pretty much everything on earth and heaven, except for trash and garbage places. But, there's things, I'm not saying there's Disney World there, but there's mountains, there's things that's very similar that look like the Swiss Alps and that kind of stuff. And so I visualized, I said, can I do it? And he said, sure. So I visualized us being in a little boat, and we're in a little lake. It was beautiful. And he's on one end, I'm on the other, because it's a little boat. And some fish swam up to him, 3, and he picked one up and he looked at it and he said, hello. And he kind of said, hey, and he put it back down. And he goes, this is how we fish here. And I just thought it was the sweetest thing. And so we spent time. He told me many things there, many teaching things. He has not stopped teaching me. He's taught me a whole life. He has been my main teacher. He's so much love in his heart. It's just hard to describe as a supernatural love. It's beyond all human understanding. And I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that from witnessing and experiencing that. I'm not saying that from a religious point of view, because I really didn't know that part of him in my human form. But in my spirit form, I can tell you it was so good that it's just I can't, it's all you want to do is be near it. And so he said I had to go back. And then when I went back, I said, it's going to hurt. He said, you need to go back. So I didn't quite listen to him. So I went back, but I didn't go in my body. So I started doing my more angel stuff around the hospital. And then a guy came up to me who I kind of felt was the administrator of the hospital at one point. His name was Dr. Tippin. He had a bald head and a bow tie. And he said, little girl, you got to get back in your body. And I was like, no, it's going to hurt. Why does God pick people that are so difficult? I guess he knows in the end I get the job done. And I'm like, no. So then Jesus showed up. He goes, you need to get in your body. I've made it okay. As soon as he said it, I was back and I was okay. And everything was fine. I did not have any, I was perfectly healthy when I came from that, including the one with the car crash where my nose was shattered in multiple places and 2 surgeries later. I was okay. I mean, you got to think all of these things. I had a nail through my freaking head on the first one. I'm okay and totally healed 100%. I mean, those are all miracles, by the way. And being resurrected from being dead and my organs should have been shutting down. I was totally 100% healthy. Okay. So that rejects everything that we've been taught in this world. And that to me, I carry him with me. I didn't realize for 39 years that I have been channeling. I found back 39 years books where I'm channeling him, but from the South, I didn't know what that word meant. I just would write inspirational things. And then I realized that's him because he talks prettier than I do. And he also communicates with me on my level of sense of humor. Like he'll say, you already know that. Why are you asking me? And he'll make me laugh. Or sometimes he'll say things and I laugh. And so I think he communicates in the way that person wants him to communicate. And so I spent a long time with him. And now, I could fast forward now, but he, several years ago, started bringing me various saints. I didn't know who they were, like Saint Ignatius. He showed up with a donkey talking about Proverbs, and I was like, okay. And I thought he looked kind of Hispanic or Italian, and he had, he's bald on top, had the friar hair. And then he'd bring me different ones. He's brought me Ramanaju, and I'm like, who's that? So he's brought me now. He works with the Galactic Federation. I've seen him on the ship with Astor. Now he's brought me to this whole starseed thing. I'm like, it's just crazy. Like he's so much more than what people can, than they know. So, the 5-year-old thing was very important. That changed me forever. When I was 10, I'll do this quickly. When I was 10, I was at a family vacation at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I was in the pool, and I was 10, and some boys that were like between 12 and 14 were playing volleyball, and I was a little girl, so I'm like, oh, look at the boys. So I'm swimming under the pool and swimming everywhere. They're playing volleyball. They don't realize that I'm underneath, and I'm like swimming the length of the pool, and I get caught up with some people playing volleyball. And so I can't get up. So I start gasping for breath, and I'm drowning is what I'm doing. But I panicked at first, and then it became sort of peaceful. And then I saw in the water separated it, and I saw just bright light coming out, and then I heard an angelic choir. I mean, like it was like 1,000 angels singing, like, whoa, like you'd imagine. And I thought, shit, it's happening again. And I was like, that's what I thought. And I'm like, I can't believe this. Next thing you know, I'm unconscious. I'm waking up. The lifeguard is helping me out. I'm like coughing up. All this water's coming out. And my mom is standing over me with my little sister because she was in the baby pool with her. I guess she's around, maybe around 2 or 3. She goes, what'd she do now? And I'm like, oh my God, this is a reaction. So I never told my parents about NDEs because I wouldn't have gotten the support at all. And matter of fact, when I came out with my NDEs, my family gave me a bunch of junk for a long time, and they still do. And I really don't care. So, because it's true and it's important to me, and they're not in that consciousness level to think any NDE is real. They just, so I don't worry about that. So
we're gonna have to save the 38-year-old one for the next show because we have run out of time, and I want you to share with our listeners one more time where they can find out more about you and these amazing miracles that you've had in your life and what you bring to our world with your wisdom and your experience.
Wow, that's sweet, Victor. I just love spending time with you. Yeah, sorry, these things sometimes can be long-winded, but hopefully somebody got a wisdom nugget out of that. If they want to find me, if they want an evidential or life path reading, they can go to southernbellmedium.com, and that's southernbellmedium.com, and Bell is Belle. Or if you're interested in taking some classes, I have some free ones on there. And I've just started a superpower class, a master class. I have 14 people in it, fantastic people from beginner to spiritual teachers. Just started it. And if they want to be a part of that, they can go to the academyofdivinewisdom.com. And that's academyofdivinewisdom.com. And they can also sign up for my free 30-minute Christ-like meditation. Well, I will bring that bright white light, that God Christ light that I experience in my NDE. And when you do that meditation, you're going to get high. And like I always say, there ain't low high like the Most High.
Tamara, what a joy having you with us today and sharing these experiences. And we got to have you back for part 2.
Wonderful. I'm just so appreciative and grateful to be here. And thank you for all that you do and spreading so much love and joy and wisdom to others.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.